Hello, it's time for another I Ching video, and today we are looking at hexagram number 19, Lin Convergence of Will. And to start out, here's hexagram number 19. The lower trigram is water, and the higher trigram is the world. So this is water or lake, and that's the world. And this hexagram, Convergence of Will, it's well, let's start with the description in the Magician's I Ching. The description of the main text says, convergence of will between superiors and their subjects, great success. Right pushing brings gain, but in the 8th month, force declines and misfortune begins. So this is about the union between the masculine lines at the bottom and the feminine that are above. And it's also about the union between the lower and the higher forces. And it's a situation where you can see that the power of the hexagram, the strong lines, are at the bottom. They're at the base. And that's both good and bad, right? It means that the higher faculties are weak. They're in a passive state. But there's a lot of energy below. But that energy has to be directed. It has to move upwards. If it doesn't, then nothing is going to come out of it, right? So, a lot of people wonder about this, because a lot of times you don't get these kind of what seem like specific time predictions in an I Ching casting. But here it says, right pushing brings gain, but in the 8th month, force declines and misfortune begins. And so the 8th month is the time in the lunar calendar. It's the time of the harvest. So this is what it's really saying here is that you're in springtime right now, right? And so this is where you have all kinds of potential, but you have to act on that potential. If you don't, then you're not going to end up, if this is your hexagram, if you don't act at this time, then eventually the momentum is going to be lost. And one way or the other, the momentum ends up being lost eventually, right? So it's about being able to make a fulfilled connection of fulfilling a high task, a large-scale task, when the opportunity is right for it. The great work description says, the superior individual's teaching and affection for his subordinates is inexhaustible. He gives his all to nurture and enlighten his people. So that's very much a theme of this hexagram. It's about giving your all, so that you have to be, this is, when you get the hexagram 19, it's saying this is the moment to make a big effort, and a big effort specifically to move things from the realm of planning into the realm of action. Right pushing brings gain, right? The Confucian commentary says, great success is won by individuals obeying their superior's will and directing their subordinates. Thus are all things rectified. But this will soon wane, as the initial will has trouble being maintained. This is due to the solid lines being used up too early in the hexagram. The overall theme of the lines involves the convergence of the will throughout different levels, between ruler and minister, and between minister and subject. So you know that there are these different levels of the different lines, each of the positions of the lines in the I Ching, hexagram, represent different things. So like the first line is the lowest point, it's the common people, right? And then the second line are the chosen officials that are in the lesser officials that are in charge of the common people, right? And then it makes its way up, right, to like the supervisors and then the ministers, and then the 5th line is the king, and the 6th line is the sage, someone who's above it all, So this is about how these lines connect with each other, and how people in different positions have to be able to be connecting effectively in order to create change. There's also a mystical symbolism in this. of connecting your own consciousness to your higher self, right? To the I Ching teaches that every human being has these two sides to them, the inferior person and the superior individual. And what you have to be able to do is, in your life, seek to connect to the superior individual. So that means, in the middle, in between the inferior person and the superior individual, is this personality that you have within yourself, right? That is a combination of those kind of qualities, right? And of those actions. So it's one thing to think about those qualities, but it's another thing to undertake an effort to embody those qualities. And you need to do that. So once you do that, you can then direct that higher will, the superior individual, to take control and order lesser forces. So looking at the lines, line 1, his will converges with his superior, the true will. Right pushing brings gain. So line 1 is a strong line. It's connecting up here with line 4, which is a weak line. So they work together and you have success. It's notable that the ruling lines of this hexagram are lines 1 and 2. Usually most of the times ruling lines are 5, sometimes it's 2 and 5, but here it's obviously 1 and 2 because these are the strong lines. That's where all the strength in the hexagram is found, down at the bottom, right? And that means that unless you move that, you can move that up to the top. This is a good situation, but it's a good situation that isn't going to last. That's the real meaning of the 8th month prediction, right? That you're going to run out of steam unless you manage to leverage this force to a higher force, right? Line 2, all converges. He does the will of the king. Good luck, and all problems thus far, still only illusory. Sorry. The second line is connecting here to the 5th line, right? Those are the two principal lines, and they're interacting with each other again in a positive way. So there's nothing between them that gets in the way. It works out, right? And you have this convergence, and any concerns you might have at this point for the moment are not legitimate concerns. You're doing okay, but you have to keep going. Line 3 is the place where you have the biggest problem in the hexagram. It's the one that doesn't fit in, Line 3, it says, he flatters his inferiors. No true benefit can be gained from this attitude. He gets nowhere, talking much and doing little. But if he pays attention and doesn't settle for this, it is not too late to correct errors. So this is actually the most negative line out of these 6. So this is a hexagram that is overwhelmingly positive, with the caveat that positivity doesn't look very long lasting unless you do certain things. There's the things you can do, and the things you can do is connecting. That's why it's called convergence of will. If you end up having a greater purpose than just benefiting from your momentary effectiveness, then that will serve something. Now the 3rd line is the one that isn't connecting well, because you have the first line of the hexagram is matching the first line of the second trigram. The second line is connecting to the second line, but the 3rd line has another broken line up there. There's no force anywhere at that level of the 3rd line. So he doesn't have the strength himself. He's unable to receive direction from his superior. What has to happen is that he's got to be able to change, right? Right now, he's got his inferiors are way better than he is, right? Like they're in a strong position. And right now, his solution to that is to just flatter them, and kind of play along. But he himself doesn't seem willing to do that work. And sooner or later, this guy is in the position of a lower level manager, right? And he's if he's actually the one that's not getting the work done, right? Like imagine in a business, right? Because they use the analogy of a kingdom, but I think for us a lot of times it might be easier to think of it as a business. His subordinates are full of ambition, right? They all want to do good stuff, and they have the energy, and this guy doesn't have the energy, and he doesn't seem to have the ambition. So all he's doing is kind of like trying to praise these guys in the hope that they'll behave themselves, and maybe to try like glean some credit for their success. But that sort of thing isn't going to work very well. From this attitude, he's not going to get anywhere. If he's the one that's only talking a lot and not doing anything, it's going to be visible, and these guys are going to end up flying over him, right? In fact, what you need to do in the third line is become a solid line, right? To change yourself so that you end up becoming actually capable and productive. And so that is possible. It's just not as easy as in the rest of the hexagram. Line 4, he closely supervises his inferior, benevolent towards them, but not flattering, a perfect convergence, no mistake. So line 4 is connecting down here to the common people. He's being benevolent but not flattering, because that means he's providing them opportunities, but he's not just seeking to have superficial credit for something. He's actually trying to encourage things for the greater good, right? Like the real problem with line 3 seems to be that they're acting only in their own self-interest, either their own wish to succeed or survive, or to take credit. They're just trying to kind of get along, or their own laziness, right? In line 4, the difference between the guy in line 3 and the guy in line 4 is that the guy in line 4 is not just interested in what's in it for himself, or how can he avoid work, or something like that, but rather he's genuinely interested in the bigger picture, in the bigger project, right? So he wants to encourage other people to do really well and to help them bring themselves up so that it will be better for everybody overall, right? That's line 4. Line 5, wise convergence. He invokes the nature of the king in his virtue. Good luck. So this is the royal line. Line 5 is always the line of the king. And here it's saying that there is a convergence, right? That here's the king. And in this case, normally a broken line in the 5th line isn't that great, but it's connected to the power that you see in the 2nd line. And so this means that these two manage to make the link. There is interconnection between them. And therefore, you have an ideal situation, because conceptually, the higher self is present, but it's also manifesting materially. That's why this hexagram is a positive hexagram and not a negative hexagram. So perfect convergence. Line 6 is interesting. So a lot of times line 6 is about going away from being above it all, getting out of there. In this hexagram, line 6 isn't that. It says he's magnanimous, putting aside his own ambitions to serve the kingdom. Honest and sincere, he supervises his inferiors with certainty, good luck, and no error. Now, what does this mean? So the sage, normally this line is about a guy who has done everything he needs to do, and now he is stepping away, right? And so like the good thing that can happen if line 6 is a well auspicious line, it's because line 6 is backing away from things and moving aside and looking at things from the bigger perspective. When line 6 is usually bad is when you're trying to keep pushing in the situation as it was. Like it's when you go overboard, right? What line 6 is, the whole thing is already should be over. And if you're trying to perpetuate it, then it becomes too much and ends up going all bad and sour, right? But in hexagram 19, because of the particularities of it, the story is different. It's about a guy who wants to go and be the sage, right? His ambition is to be above it all and to stop having to do the work, right? And to be like, to now rest in these higher things and not worry about the lower concerns. but for the good of the kingdom, he realizes he has to take action, right? So here's line 6 is going to try to supervise the inferior in line 3, even though he is beyond it, right? So it may not work, right? But it's good for him to try, right? Good luck and no error, right? No error is a term that you often see when things might not work out, but that you wouldn't be wrong for trying this in this case, right? Even though it's something that you thought you had, gotten past and you weren't going to do this anymore. But in this case, he's not doing this because he's trying to hold on to glory. He wants to be retired, if you like, but he now has instead to go back in to be able to try to do something good, not for his own ambitions, but for the greater good, right? So that's hexagram 19. Now, if you're a member of the Yi Fa Society, you're going to see in a day or two another video that is only for members of the Yi Fa Society. It goes into way more detail about the context and the specific divinatory meanings of the lines, and the kind of the secrets of the hexagram. So if you're really enjoying this I Ching series, and not just enjoying, but you're interested in actually working in a program of spiritual cultivation, of studying the I Ching, of mastering your self-cultivation, then you should consider looking into the Yi Fa Society. And if you want that, get in touch. Check out all the other videos in this playlist, especially if you just happened across this video first. And check out my other playlists for other series on some other interesting commentaries on spirituality. Oh, and feel free to share this video anywhere you like. And if you like, in the description below, you're going to see a link to a newsletter to sign up to. The newsletter is not circulated anymore, but what you can get from it is that when you get if you subscribe to it, you'll get a confirmation link. And that link will have in it, or rather a confirmation email, and that email will have in it a link to a free download of the PDF of The Path and the Power, which, just like The Magician's I Ching, is my translation and commentary of the I Ching. The Path and the Power is my translation and commentary of the Tao Te Ching. And so you can get it completely free if you want to join that mailing list. And again, you won't be bothered with emails. So feel free to check that out too. Share the video anywhere you like. Thank you very much.